name is Melvin Parson,
All right.
and I was born in a small one-horse town called Detroit,
Okay.
and I had the fortune of being raised by one of those folks that are sometimes affectionately known as praying grandmothers.
Okay.
You know, and this woman here, and she put a lot of time in me. You know, she invested a lot of time and a lot of prayers, and she made sure that I early on went to a private school and got a decent education. And but my environment that I lived in took over, and you know, and I grew up, you know, in an era where young boys were being exploited to sell drugs, and you know, and so you know, so that swayed my direction in life, and
Sure.
and then you know, and my heroes were people that hustled in the street and all that kind of stuff, and as a result of that, you know, I made quite a series of like bad choices and bad decisions, and they wound me up in, you know, places that I was not at home built and designed to go
Okay.
in the direction of, you know, like I wound up in jail and prison.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and in fact, I spent over 13 years of my life in prison or
Okay.
jails off and on.
Okay.
I wound up being addicted to drugs and
Mhm.
alcohol, and battled with that for years. Even wound up homeless a few times. You know, I dropped out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
You know, went back many years later to get a GED, and subsequently went on to college, and here in Washtenaw County, and went to Washtenaw Community College for a couple of years. I thought I didn't know why I went. I didn't know what I was going to do. I went back to college, and the only reason I went back to college was to get student loan money. Yeah, that's it, man. You know, and somehow wound up a few years later with a bachelor's degree in social work from Eastern Michigan University.
All right.
So I got kind of bamboozled into that, I feel like.
So you went back. You got your GED, and you went back to Washtenaw Community College.
I did.
And you ended up at Eastern.
I did.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
was what drove you into social work? What was that all about?
What drove me into social work was another person who was very prominent in my life at the time that I was at Washtenaw Community College. I was going there to learn how to be a welder.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to be a welder, and I think I would have been a pretty decent welder, made decent money, whatever. And I went over to his house one day, and at this time, this particular individual knew me better than anyone on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we had developed a really close relationship, and I went over there to just show him some of my welding projects.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to me, Melvin, yeah, you probably would be a good welder, but if you really want to be happy, you should go back to school and become a social worker and help a bunch of people.
All right.
And I valued, you know, his opinion as it related to me so much that I shifted direction and went back to school and started taking social work classes, and wound up at Eastern Michigan, and continued in that path, and met some amazing people there and some amazing professors, and including the professor that nominated me for this award, David Manville.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and the rest was history. And it's so interesting, though. I see social work from like, I don't want to be a social worker.
Okay.
You know, very honorable profession. I see, like, I don't want to be anyone's social worker.
Uh-huh. Get it?
I see things, I think, from a macro perspective. I'll give you an example, Callan. Like, I don't want to take this unhealthy plant out of its soil and bring it over here and nurse it back to health, and then take this now healthy plant and put it back in the soil that made it unhealthy to
Right.
begin with.
Right.
What I want to do is change the soil,
Yes.
and then the plant, you don't have to remove the plant,
Yeah.
right? You just change the soil, change its environment.
Yeah. I like that analogy.
Yeah, and it's kind of like our motto with the organization that I have founded and am the director of. Like, our motto is to change the soil in the lives of those we come in contact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's back up a little bit.
Yeah.
You started this organization, right?
Right.
And it's because all these things add up one to another, right?
Right.
So this guy says, you're not supposed to be a welder. You're supposed to be a social worker.
Mm-hmm.
You go there, and you learn about social work, but you
Right.
realize that's not what I want to be. I want to change the soil.
Right.
And then, so how did you go from, being somebody
Social worker.
studying for social work to starting an organization? And what is
To
your
a farmer?
organization? Yeah.
Yeah. Great question. I mean, you know what? And let me back up. I guess what I am doing is social working.
Yes, it is.
Yes. So let me say that. Yeah.
You didn't want to do it. You didn't want to go into a social worker role,
Right.
but you do want to do social work.
Yes. So yeah, let me acknowledge that
Yeah.
part.
Yeah,
There.
yeah. I see you.
And I kind of stumbled upon that. Again, this same person who told me go back to, if I wanted to be happy, to go to school and become a social worker. Also, he knew at the core of me that I'm a champion of social justice and social equality.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a firm believer that either you've got a seat at the table or it's your ass that's on the menu, right?
Yep.
That.
Right. Right.
And somehow or another, where I was living at, which was Avalon Housing at the time, I was living in one of their units, and they have an edible garden program. So if you're living there and you want to grow some food, they've got some raised vegetable beds. They will provide you some seedlings and some back-end support. And I lived there for 4 years and never thought about being part of that program.
Okay.
And then, and I've told this story many times, and then in 2013, this wonderful lady named Verna, who was a prolific gardener, passed away in that winter. And then the following spring in 2014, I somehow wound up with one of her raised vegetable beds.
Okay.
And I didn't ask for the vegetable bed. It just kind of landed in my lap. And so I thought, okay, let me roll with this and see how this plays out.
Okay.
And I was given some seedlings, and I was cleaning out the bed one day. I remember I was pulling all the weeds out of there, getting ready to put the seedlings in the ground. And I swear to you, Callan, I could feel Verna's spirit come down over me. And
Yeah.
I looked up in the heavens and I said, hey, Verna, look, you know I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do the best I can to honor you.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
got some seedlings, put them in the ground, some stuff started growing. I saw a documentary called Food Inc. I'm
Saw
like,
it,
holy
yeah.
cow. And
Yeah.
so that led me down to the farmer's market in Ann Arbor,
Uh-huh.
and I'm down there trying to figure out what kale is or the zucchini or you name it, and I see nobody that looked like me
Right.
the whole time I'm there, and I looked around at the folks selling me my food, and none of them looked like me either.
Yep.
And again, I'm a firm believer in social justice and
Mhm.
social equality and having a seat at the table. And this person knows that about me, and so they would send me articles of farmers and stuff like that, and all of them were old white men.
Yeah.
And he knew that would get at me in a way.
Yeah.
And so it was all those things combined that led me to wanting to have a seat at the table.
Okay.
And so I started a company called We the People Growers Association
Okay.
with no strategy in mind. I just wanted to raise some money to fundraise to get some shovels and some rakes, and someone told me the best way to do that is to do a crowdfunding thing, but then I had to become an entity, and so
Yeah.
that's why We the People Growers Association was born. And from there, from having that vegetable bed that I inherited while at Avalon Housing, I went on to do a couple community garden plots, and then in 2017 I had an opportunity to lease some land from where we currently are now, from a church called Grace Fellowship Church House of Solutions
Okay.
in Ypsilanti off South Harris Road. And so it started with a half an acre of land.
Mm-hmm.
And again, at this point, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And so I got a rototiller, created some vegetable beds, ordered $1,200 worth of seedlings. I had no idea how many seedlings $1,200 would get you.
Right. Right. You found out.
I found out, and it was like the field of dreams, man. Like people started just showing up to help.
Yeah.
And I think that year, man, I had over 200 people come out and volunteer and help me build this thing.
Nice.
And I wound up selling produce to 17 restaurants in Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti that year. And I didn't know what the heck I was doing.
You were supposed to be doing it,
I
though.
was supposed to be doing
Pretty
it.
clear.
Yeah, I remember calling one of my dear friends. His name is Ari Weinsweg, one of the co-founders of Zingerman's.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Hey Ari, I think I'm in a little trouble here, man. I'm growing all this dang on food and I don't know what to do with it." And he says to me, "Mel, we'll buy some from you." And so, like, he was my first customer, right?
Yeah.
Like, Zingerman's Roadhouse was my first customer.
Yeah,
And,
Ari's great, isn't he?
awesome individual. He really is.
Yeah.
And again, I didn't know, I didn't know what I was doing. But the chefs were telling me that, man, this food is incredible. This is great. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm glad you think so, right? Because it wasn't intentional on my part.
Mm-hmm.
But what was intentional, Callan, was that somehow instinctively I knew to pay attention to the soil. So like I tried to keep good soil and mend it and put some worm compost tea on it and all of this stuff. And at the end of that magical year, the thing that I learned was that you can be a gardener or a farmer that doesn't know what they're doing, but if your soil's good, chances are your plants will flourish
For a while.
for a while. And on the other hand, you can be a brilliant farmer or gardener and you know exactly what you're doing, but if your soil's not good, chances are your plants won't flourish.
Right.
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 So bottom line is that it's all about the soil.
Yes,
right?
it is.
It's all about the soil.
Yes,
And because of that social work experience and language and education, it dawned on me that the same thing applies to human beings just as it does to the plants, right?
Yeah.
It's all about our soil, right?
Yeah.
And if we're in good soil, our chances of flourishing and thriving are better, and if we're not, chances are we very well may not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've had some really cool nudges along your path, man.
I have.
People nudging you in a direction, right? And
Yes.
you were supposed to be somewhere and you didn't know it, but people have
Right.
been kind of just giving you a little shove.
Yeah.
Verna,
Yeah.
she really, you ended up with a gift.
I ended up with a gift.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
So you started this business, We the People. You've got you've got the farm. You're starting to grow things. You're starting to understand the impact that you can have not only on the environment and the ecology, but on people as well.
Right.
So what happened then?
Oh, what happened then was, next year, same thing. But at that point, it was primarily me and just this incredible volunteer pool of people that would come by and help.
Mm-hmm.
And in December of 2018, I founded a nonprofit called We the People Opportunity Farm,
Okay.
and that's currently where everything goes through, And so with that being said, in my experience of being formerly incarcerated and all of that, I wanted to come up with a platform where we could begin to hire people returning home from incarceration.
Okay.
That was challenging because there's not a lot of money in farming, and we didn't have the ability, and still don't, to keep people on full time all year round because of the weather.
Right.
But what we did in 2019, we experimented a little bit. We weren't able to really get off the ground. But last year was another one of those magical years where we started. Last year was our inaugural, what we call internship program. So it's a 9-month paid internship program for formerly incarcerated men and women.
Okay.
COVID threw some wrinkles in there, as it
Yes.
did with everyone.
Yeah.
But we were able to usher 5 formerly incarcerated men and women through that program at different points in time.
Yeah.
Like no one stayed the whole 9 months.
Right.
But at different points in times, we were able to usher 5 men and women through that program. We went on field trips. Some of them worked with Habitat for Humanity, helping them refurbish or build a house in the community. And after the internship was over, which was the end of October, we were able to help them, at least 4 of them. A couple of them already had jobs, but we were able to help a couple of folks find full-time employment, which is important, right?
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
And this year we want to double that. We want to start with 4 interns. Last year we just wanted to keep 2.
Right.
This year we want to start with 4, and we want to keep 4. And not only do we want to keep 4, we think about the words kindness and dignity. I've had conversations with this person a lot about kindness and dignity and what does that look like. And he always says to me that it doesn't solve the world's problems, but it goes a long way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I agree with him. And so I think about what that looks like for me in my life and how do I convey kindness and dignity to those I come in contact with, but also how does the organization do the same?
Sure.
And so one of the ways in which we want to convey that to the folks, the formerly incarcerated men and women that come into our program this year, is we want to pay them a wage that says to them that they're valued.
Sure.
And we value them. And so this year we're going to pay our interns $17 an hour
Okay.
to be with us 15 to 20 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
One of our partners in this endeavor will be the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office Street Outreach Program.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got other valuable partners such as Michigan Works.
Mhm.
We envision our interns going through a soft skills training program through Michigan Works. And of course, our relationship with Habitat for Humanity and quite a few other organizations here in Washtenaw County. You know, we want to be able to early on identify what their needs are and their objectives. And during the time they're with us in those 9 months, we want to help them to meet those needs and objectives. And,
Oh, yeah.
and once they're done, once the internship is over, to continue to support them in any way possible. I think this year we're starting an endowment fund
Mm-hmm.
for our interns. So like once they're done, they may need transportation to get back and forth to school or to a job. And we want to be able to help them with that. Maybe they want to buy a used car or something.
Sure.
And so we want to be able to help them. Or they may get behind on their rent or something
Mhm.
like that. And we want to be able to support them and build relationships with them and build community in that way.